Look at the time. Do you know where your legal AF After Dark is? I do. We're back. And we talk about on the most recent podcast if the Senate and the Republicans in the Senate will revolt against Donald Trump's most revolting cabinet picks. I'm talking about RFK Jr. and his drug addiction for Health and Human Services. I'm talking about the foreign Russian asset of Tulsi Gabbard in charge of intelligence. I'm talking about a person who is accused of raping girls in Matt Gaetz being our head of the Department of Justice. And I'm talking about a Fox and Friends weekend co-anchor, Christian nationalist, and abuser of women, at least as alleged, Pete Hegseth for Department of Defense. We break it all down for you. Take a listen.
Talk about the intersection of law and politics. A lot of these nominees by Donald Trump, when you look into it, obviously, when it comes to the ethics investigation of Matt Gaetz potentially being a pedo and potentially is doing a lot of work there. It's an obvious intersection of law and politics. But you talk about Peter Hegseth now with allegations against him for engaging in sexual assault from 2017 resurfacing. Hegseth denies the allegation. Hegseth, by the way, is on marriage number 3, cheated on wife 1 with wife 2, had a baby with wife 3 while married to wife 2. Wife 3 works for Fox. So the intersection of lawsuits, and these appointees, I think is a reflection as well of Donald Trump, who's always been embroiled in this type of conduct, engaging in this type of conduct. So we'll break all of that down. From a messaging standpoint, though, I do want to call out Democrats, though, who are still very process-based. Well, we think that the ethics report should be released of Matt Gaetz. Indeed, the ethics committee has thoroughly and meticulously engaged with witnesses, and we think that what would be most appropriate. All right, just say the ethics report. There's a report that Republicans are covering up that Trump's AG could be a pedo. Like, just say that. Like, why can't you say the American people should not have a pedo as an AG? Right? It's a pretty simple message. It's the truth. We all want to get out the truth. But the Democrats are still caught up, I think, in over-intellectualizing these things. So just call it out. We don't want a pedo as our AG. Like, pretty simple to say that. So let's show you what's going on this week. Get your take, Michael Popok. Just a reminder for everybody, Trump's nominees, technically nominees, the president selects his nominees. Then there's what's called an advice and consent function of the Senate, which means the Senate then is obligated under the Constitution to hold hearings to confirm or to not confirm these picks by Trump. You'll talk about Trump's end run around it, but just the quick review. I talked about it at the outset. Trump picked Matt Gaetz to be his AG. He picked Tulsi Gabbard, who many believe to be compromised by Russia because she parrots verbatim Russian talking points. She also went to meet with the dictator of Syria after he used chemical weapons against his own people to be the director of national intelligence, what he picked Tulsi for, giving her access to our most classified information. Speaking of which, give the nuclear codes to a random Fox News weekend host, the Fox and Friends weekend host, Peter Hegseth. Granted, he was in the military. He also, has this tattoo that many say is aligned with kind of a white nationalist tattoo. It's a lot of white nationalists have the tattoo. He says it's just a tattoo showing the crusades that took place, but whatever. Kristi Noem, who killed her dog Cricket, to become the Homeland Security Director. Tom Homan to be the border czar. By the way, with all of these people, no FBI, Donald Trump saying that he doesn't want the FBI to do any checks, no background checks, not looking into their qualifications, whether they can be compromised. So you have that right there. And then there's this issue, right? The Congress has been investigating Matt Gaetz potentially being a pedo from the lawyer of one of the women who was underage at the time. We believe there's credible information linking Matt Gaetz to underage sex or engaging in underage sex. There are witnesses to it, also drug use, rampant drug use, as well as obstruction of justice is what we expect is in this report. So Republicans, you want this report out there? Jim Jordan, who covered up sexual abuse at his previous job before being a member of Congress, here's what he says.
And Congressman Jordan, do you have any sense about what will happen with that House ethics report that was supposed to come out Friday? Remember, Gates had been accused of things and no prosecution had been continued. It had been dropped. But Dick Durbin's trying to get his hands on that report, obviously, to leak it out to hurt President Trump. What is your sense on that?
Well, it's my understanding that is not supposed to go public. So if it's not supposed to under the rules, it shouldn't go public. And what I know about Matt Gaetz is one of the best members we had on our committee. In my time in Congress, which has been a while, I don't know, there are very few people who have the cross-examination skills he does. And I want someone in the Justice Department who's not going to say moms and dads at school board meeting needs to be investigated. I want someone at the Justice Department who's going to say it's wrong for the FBI to do a memorandum and say that pro-life Catholics are extremists. I want someone at the Justice Department who can tell us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, who put cocaine at the White House instead of all the other stuff they seem to be focused on.
By the way, you notice what Jim Jordan's saying there, but also notice his messaging, right? Saying that the DOJ's going after pro-life Catholics and calling them extremists. That never happened. Okay, people who threatened to blow up schools with bombs got investigated. But notice how they message. Notice how Fox messages there as well. Dick Durbin, a Democrat, wants to hurt Donald Trump. No, we just don't want a freaking pedo to be the attorney general. And by the way, MAGA Mike Johnson, here's what he had to say. Let's play it.
I'm going to strongly request the Ethics Committee not to issue the report, because that is not the way to do things in the House, and I think that would be a terrible precedent.
For those listening on audio, MAGA Mike Johnson said, I am going to strongly request, as opposed to what, weakly request? I'm going to mediocrely request. I'm going to strongly request that the Ethics Committee not release the report. So, Popok, let me throw it to you, because also, in addition to these very serious allegations, Matt Gaetz was never really even a practicing lawyer. I think the one case that he took, he sued an elderly woman in a debt collection case because she couldn't pay a home care firm that his dad happened to own. Like, that was like one of the two cases. He's never stepped foot in a trial. He's never zero qualifications for the job of attorney general. But also, I mean, look, we collectively should not be okay with having a pedo as the attorney general. The report should come. Why is this even a controversial thing?
And there's also a cover-up within the cover-up. It is obvious to me, based on the timing, that the House Ethics Committee that had worked 2 years on the investigation of Matt Gaetz, that elected to go forward with it even after the Biden Department of Justice had dropped the criminal investigation, presumably or purportedly because they got there were some issues with the victim, but the victim, who was underage, hence the pedo girl, when she was allegedly raped in a drug-fueled party. These are the allegations. By the way, they've not just been they're not just in the ethics investigation or the Department of Justice. You and I reported on a federal filing in a case down in Florida involving Joel Greenberg, who is the Matt Gaetz wingman, who they went away outside the country and brought these girls with them, who's serving 9 years in prison for these very same allegations, who's been ready, willing, and able to testify, and has testified to the House Ethics Committee about it. It showed up in a filing in a lawsuit that was brought related to these matters, in which Matt Gaetz was placed in the filing at a drug-fueled party filled with underage girls for sex. So we were not shocked when the House Ethics Committee, which is one of the only committees in Congress that is actually equally balanced, equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans, although chaired by a Republican. I am almost certain that the Republican chairperson tipped off Matt Gaetz about what was going to be in the report, which was going to be terrible against Matt Gaetz, and told him he should resign as a strategy to avoid its publication. Because 2 days before Matt Gaetz actually resigned from Congress, including the next Congress. He's done. This guy made it public. The chairperson, he said, well, we'll publish it on Friday unless Matt Gaetz has resigned by then. I was like, oh my God, 2 days later, or a day later, Matt Gaetz resigned. So I am sure there was a conversation. I'm pretty sure there was a conversation in which it was revealed to Matt Gaetz that he should really get out of Dodge and he should try to resign. This whole Jim Jordan and the Speaker of the House saying, oh, there's no more jurisdiction, it shouldn't be released. And as you said, kind of a line from, although I'm sure it was missed on him, A Few Good Men, I strongly object. Oh, well, as long as you strongly object, then that's different. All of that totally ignores the tradition and precedent of that committee to release reports even if the person has resigned or has no longer been returned to Congress. There's been two examples, one in 1987 and one in the 1990s, where they issued the report even though the person wasn't there. And now we have a special case because Donald Trump, in his infinite wisdom, has decided to nominate the person who is being accused of being a pedophile and a rapist to be the Attorney General of the United States, which now puts the total attention on the Republicans in the Senate, the most deliberative body that we've got going for us, where people have no term limits and are going to outlast Donald Trump by a lot. He's only in their mind a one-term president. And so the question is that 3 or so seat advantage is quickly going to evaporate because they are not going to support Matt Gaetz, and they're demanding that report be released for their confirmation purposes to the Senate Judiciary Committee. The current Senate Judiciary Committee, which is lame duck led by Democrats, is demanding it. But more importantly, Susan Collins has said she opposes the Matt Gaetz nomination. Lisa Murkowski, Alaska, same thing. Cornyn, who just barely missed being the Senate Majority Leader, which was not Donald Trump's choice. We'll talk about that later, and how Susie Wiles has already failed Donald Trump on numerous occasions. They are all arrayed against Donald Trump. That is almost enough to reduce the majority in the Senate in the new Congress to zero, to nothing. And meaning Gaetz will not have to go. My working theory has been this has all been a charade. Donald Trump, it's a two-step charade. Matt Gaetz resigns because he's going to try to stop the report from coming out. Although the other part of it is, then why would Donald Trump, in a split-second decision, which apparently is how he's making these decisions, with Boris Epshteyn, his closest attorney confidant that's been picking all of these legal positions. Apparently there was a plane ride in which the Trump whisperer, Boris Epshteyn, who is indicted, a lawyer, but indicted in Arizona for the election interference and fake electors scheme, and was an unindicted co-conspirator in the D.C. election case, we'll talk about later. He whispered in his ear, Matt Gaetz. Susie Wiles, the chief of staff nominee, is nowhere to be found on the plane. By the time it lands, it's Matt Gaetz. So they didn't really think this through because they thought, well, we're going to bury the report over here, but it's going to be revived over there by the Senate, even the Republicans demanding its publication, its release to the public. I've always thought this was a major troll by Donald Trump. He knows he can't get the votes for Matt Gaetz. He doesn't have anybody in his administration, including Susie Wiles, to wrestle up these votes. Normally, that White House position is somebody who has deep relationships on Capitol Hill in the House and the Senate to go get these votes. She does not have that. And it's obvious she doesn't have that. And her number one pick to be the Senate Majority Leader was her old boss, Rick Scott, and he went down in flames by the Senate in the first round of voting. So he's got no friends, so to speak, in the Senate, not enough to confirm. And then what will he do? He'll just force Matt Gaetz into some other position that doesn't require Senate confirmation somewhere in the administration, promising him a job. Because as you said, he's a sort of a clueless bumbler of a lawyer. So like representing other MAGA interests in a Gaetz law firm, I don't think is going to work. So you have that. And then on top of it, you've got the other white nationalist / sex assault charge against Hegseth. You already gave his sordid background. And then you've got this 2017 charge in Northern California, and now he's being represented, talking about bringing this all home. He's represented by Tim Parlatore, who used to represent Donald Trump, but quit him after Mar-a-Lago raid happened. And so, the execution of the search warrant. So this is all, in my view, as I said at the top of today, a gift. And the gift to us is the more outrageous these picks are, the potential Russian foreign asset being named the head of national intelligence, the confessed drug addict and drug user RFK Jr. being nominated to head Health and Human Services as a former environmental lawyer with a drug problem. Pete Hegseth, who's got his long list of other problems. We haven't even touched on, although you showed the tattooed photo, where his allegiance really lies in America. And he's also the one leading the charge for the purge of the military of all the generals and colonels. That came out of the fevered imagination of Hegseth, which Trump adopted. And then you've got Matt Gaetz, the potential pedophile. This group, right, if they went through a proper vetting, would never survive. And now we got to leave it to the Senate to call these people out and get these four at least pulled as nominees or die in committee or on a floor vote in the Senate.
Look, what did Donald Trump promise that his presidency would be about? Retribution. So if you wanted to inflict retribution on America, on the different departments, how would you inflict retribution on the Department of Justice and career lawyers who work there? If Donald Trump believes they all screwed me by investigating me, put the least qualified individual who will torment them to be the leader with zero qualifications that basically would result in the DOJ being destroyed. Retribution. You pick Matt Gaetz. You hate your military. You hate your military generals. How do you get retribution? How do you screw the generals? How do you screw America's military? You pick a Fox News host, the weekend host, with a very, very, very suspicious background to run the Department of Defense. How do you screw over your national intelligence community if you want to inflict retribution on them? Because you believe that they connected you to Russia and you think Russia is a big hoax against you. Pick the person who many believe to be compromised by Russia to lead as the director of national intelligence. How do you screw over all of the people advocating for environmental changes who you believe harmed your interests? Well, pick RFK Jr. to run it as well. So these moves, if you think about it, are a deliverance of the promise of retribution. Just, I think it's logical but illogical, but think about his sicko mind and what he's doing here.
Welcome back, Legal AF. It exists in two places, both in the MeidasTouch universe, here on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel for the video version. For the audio version, wherever you get audio podcasts from, look up Legal AF. And we're now over on a new channel in collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network. You guessed it. There's so much to talk about at the intersection of law and politics. We had to form Legal AF, the channel. So go over there, hit the subscribe button at Legal AF MTN for MeidasTouch Network. Until my next reporting, until my next podcast, or all things Legal AF, I'm Michael Popok reporting. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.